Hey you, stop, wait, and learn some math. Sorry for the goofy intro, but today we're going to be learning how to write a pseudocode and a flowchart. We'll be answering exam questions from the 2019 paper 1 and paper 2 questions. Alright, so let's define a pseudocode. A pseudocode, these are a set of instructions that the computer must follow to complete a task. You dig? Alright, so now that we have the definition of a pseudocode, we can answer the question from 2019 paper 2, maths paper 2, grade 12. Alright, so before we continue, I have to explain what each of those boxes mean in that question. Alright, so each of these symbols is important if you want to know how to write a pseudocode. They're not only used for a flowchart, but you can also use them to determine how a pseudocode is going to be. So like in a flowchart, you have to start or stop, and that's why we use the oval. The oval represents the start or stop, like the way you've seen in the question. Then we also have the rectangle, which represents processing. Like in the question we're doing, you see that in the rectangle, that's where the processes take place. That's where the calculations happen. That's why in the question we were given, the 2019 one, you see that's where the formula is written. And then in the parallelogram, tongue twister, that's where the parallelogram, that's where the inputs and outputs are put in, like the things that are supposed to go into the formula. That's why I put them in the parallelogram. Then lastly, we have the diamond, which represents a decision. Like you check in the previous question we've been given, there's a diamond which says if this is less than this, then, all right? So that's what those boxes and images represent. Okay, so first we have to look at the question. The question says the flowchart below shows the steps in calculating the volume of a solid given the base area and height. Write the corresponding pseudocode for the flowchart given above. That's the 2019 question I gave you earlier. So now this is how you answer it. When writing a pseudocode, you have to start with the word start. So you write start there, right on the margin line. Then the next thing is to write enter base area, which is your input in the flowchart. So enter base area won't be in the same line as start. You have to leave some space from the margin line. When you put enter base area, now you come to the decision, which is in the box, in the decision box in the flowchart. It's saying is a less than 0, but when you're writing the pseudocode, that is going to change to if. So you're going to say if a is less than 0, and also this if a is less than 0 shouldn't be in the same line as enter. You also leave some space from enter and put it somewhere in the middle. Then after if you check in your diagram, there is display error message. That is also going to come in the pseudocode, but this time the then display is also going to be in the same line as if. So you're going to say then display, then open your quotation marks, error message, close them, then you write and re-enter positive base area. After that you come to else. So else should be in the same line as enter base area, which you wrote earlier under start. So else enter height. After writing else enter height, you put if h is less than 0. You also do it the same. You write it in the same line as if a less than 0. Then also here it's saying then display error message. You also do the same as you did for if a is less than 0. You also say then display error message and re-enter positive height. Then there's going to be another else. This time the else is going to be v is equals to a times h. But when writing a times h, we're not going to use the big times because it's a computer. We're going to use the small star script. So it's going to be v is equals to a star script, then h. Then you're going to write end if. It shouldn't be in the same line as else. End if should be in the same line as the ifs, okay? So when you write end if, you say display volume. The display volume should be in the same line as else, as you can see. Then you write stop. Start and stop should always be in the same line. So start and stop are the only ones that are in the same line. Else, enter, else, and display, same line. Then if, and also for the displays and whatnot, those are also in the same line together with end if. So that's just how it is. Right, let me just explain the pseudocode before we continue. So this pseudocode we've written, what it simply means, let me just start from the word start. So when you put in start and then when you put in enter base area, what you're simply commanding the computer is this. When you enter the base area, if a is less than 0, then it should display error message and then re-enter positive base area. If not, meaning else enter height. Same process repeats for height. If h is less than 0, then display error message and re-enter positive height. If not, or in other words, else, then you come to the formula now, which is the processing the rectangle, which is V is equals to A times H. Then the end if simply means that this whole set should finish when the volume is displayed. So meaning V is equals to A times H should finish when the volume is displayed. And that's when the program should stop. So else V is equals to A times H should end if volume is displayed. You understand? Okay, that's when you stop. Alright, so now let's just define a flowchart. So a flowchart is simply a diagrammatical illustration of a pseudocode. So to break it down from that complicated English, a flowchart is like a diagram version of a pseudocode. Alright, so now we're going to answer a question that's asking us to draw a flowchart. This one is from the 2020 paper 2 GCE grade 12 exam. So the question reads, the program below is given in the form of a pseudocode. So this is how the pseudocode is. They start, enter radius. If radius is less than 0, then display error message and re-enter positive radius, else enter slant height. If slant height less than 0, then display error message and re-enter positive slant height. Else area is equals to pi times radius times open brackets r plus slant height close brackets. And if display area stop. Now the question reads, draw the corresponding flowchart for the information given above. Alright, now that we're answering a flowchart, you have to go back to the slide or the section of the video where I was showing you what each shape means. Like the oval means start or stop, the parallelogram means input or output, the diamond means there's a decision being made, the rectangle means there's something happening, meaning something is being processed, or the computer is analyzing something. So now when we're answering this part, I'll start with this part of the slide first, then I'll go to the ending part because there isn't enough space. So you first start with the oval, which represents start. So you put it there and you write start. Next is you input, because in the question, in the pseudocode, it's saying enter radius. So in your flowchart, you use the parallelogram to input. So you say enter R. Next, there's a decision being made because it's saying if radius is less than 0, then display error message and re-enter positive radius. Else, so meaning there's a decision being made between two things. If the radius is less than 0, it should display an error message. If not, you enter slant height. But in this case, when you are putting that part into the flowchart, you use the diamond, which represents a decision box, and then when you're putting in the pseudocode, it's saying if radius is less than 0, but in the flowchart, it's that if is going to change to is. So is radius less than 0, or is r less than 0? If yes, then you use the input or output box, the parallelogram, to say error message in quotation marks, r must be positive. But if no, you still use the parallelogram and say enter slant height, because it's the input now, inputting the slant height. And then for the slant height, you also repeat the same process. Is s less than 0, or is slant height less than 0? If yes, error message in quotation marks, r must be positive. Alright, so a continuation of the slide. So if the slant height is less than 0, no, then now you come to the processing box. That's why you simply put in the formula, because now the computer has to process. So when it processes, you put in the formula that for the area, you put it in. Make sure when you're using, if there are signs like multiplication, don't use the actual multiplication because it's a computer. Use a starlet sign, which looks like a little star on the top right, on the top. And when after processing, the computer is now supposed to give you the answer or display. That's when you put in the parallelogram or the output box, in this case, display area, then you stop, meaning the program has finished and it stopped. If you still have problems with this video and you don't understand, then go to a mental asylum or something. You may have explained proper. Alright, man. So like, that's your problem.